Ambassador to Canada, Bruce Heyman. Ambassador, great to be able to see you today.
Good to be back in Toronto. Yeah.
Thank you, and thanks so much for your time as we try to figure out what is going on in these trade negotiations with President Trump and the rest of the world. Have you figured out what he is trying to achieve?
Well, let's just take everybody back and understand President Trump. He had 70 years of learning and behaviors that we should all look to, and those behaviors are in the construction and real estate business. Primarily, we know factually that he has not abided by contracts. He has walked away from paying people when they should have been paid, cement contractors, painting contractors, and he's used the bankruptcy code to effectively walk away from obligations and debt obligations. So now let's play this forward, and let's look at the G7 and what just happened and what is happening even here today as he's attacking Chancellor Merkel and the comments that have been coming out about the Prime Minister. You know, I think he felt in the construction trade that the relationships were disposable. And if you didn't do it my way, then you're out and I'll get somebody else. Well, you can't go and be disposable with your friends in the G6 or G7. There aren't a whole nother group of like, okay, you guys are out, I'm just gonna go get a whole nother group of countries here. But he effectively is treating the remaining G6 effectively like a painting contractor or a cement contractor and squeezing them, for outcomes. And that's what we see as going on. There was a second statement that Navarro made that I think is very instructive for everybody here in Canada as to where the path is going ahead. And that is that he said something to the effect of, you're very fortunate that the president was even willing to sign on to that socialist communique coming out of the G7. So it led me to believe that they weren't going to approve that anyway, and much of this was a setup during the whole process. But it also leads one to understand how that White House is now feeling about Canada, given that language.
So how do you think they feel about Canada?
Well, I think Canada represents everything that's the opposite of what Donald Trump believes. And so it's the fair treatment of women in the workplace. It's making sure the environment is taken care of. Equal pay for equal work. Understanding that refugees need a place. And look, we recognize that there are limitations of it, but how you treat people. We're here in Toronto, where over half the population of Toronto was not born in Canada. So this country and the United States were made of immigrants. But I think that the West Wing of the White House, in that specific group, the Miller, Navarro, Lighthizer, I'd say even Bannon is having some influence here. They hate what Canada represents. And what Canada represents looks very similar to what the previous administration was fighting for on a global basis. And Canada is getting to be very much alone in fighting for these ideals around the world.
What do you think, though, it would take for it to be too much for these Republicans to, what's the tipping point for them?
I don't know.
One would think it would be the border and children.
Yeah, you would think. You had Laura Bush, former First Lady, come out and use her voice, but I'm not sure. Remember, there are a lot of old white guys who are actually there, who are making these decisions, and I think that their primary interests are business, money, retaining their jobs, campaign contributions, and the value set seems to have gone away. This was the group that I could rely on as somebody who's voted for both parties in my lifetime. I could rely on the Republicans to be fiscally responsible, and I could rely on them to at least have some set of family values that they said that they believed in. I feel we're fiscally reckless at this point, running huge deficits now at late stage in economic recovery. And what they're doing now with women, with gun violence, and these poor children getting assassinated on a regular basis, and now the children at the border, this is not family values. Democrats vote differently than Republicans. Republicans vote out of duty. And I say perspiration. Democrats vote out of inspiration. If they're not inspired, they tend not to turn out the polls. A lot younger, more creative class that that need to be motivated to get out. No mistake, we are in a trade war. What's happening is punches are being landed and being responded to. And so when you're doing that around the world, when you're doing that, the two largest economies are doing it with each other, that you're doing it with our best trading partner, which is Canada. And I've used the word partner with Canada because we make things together and do things together, and it's a balanced trading relationship. We can debate whether it's deficit or surplus.
Right.
By the way, the U.S. has a surplus, but it's balanced. China is not a partner. China is in a transactional relationship with the United States. But he should not be using these same techniques against Canada. This is outrageous.